Welcome to Business Leaders Coach, where we educate, enable, equip, and empower you to become the best leader that you can be. My name is Toyoshi B, founder of Business Leaders Coach. And at Business Leaders Coach, we work with CEOs and their leadership teams, companies that are scaling up and want to accelerate their learning. On this podcast, I bring you practical steps that you can apply in your leadership today. We draw wisdom from some of the best business books, bring on guests and entrepreneurs and authors as well. You can go to businessleaderscoach.com/podcast, subscribe so that we can send each episode and any templates or tools that come with these subsequent episodes. A slight glitch in the system for those who haven't heard from me. We are back, and today I want to talk about a very important subject, which is about strategic planning. And when it comes to winning in business, we're going to find that the organization that has the best strategy wins. But developing a strategy has become a very confusing exercise. Now, the reality is that too many people have overcomplicated this terminology. And I remember being in a large organization and everybody asking the question, what's your strategy? What's your strategic plan? And I think it makes people feel overwhelmed. And so today I want to share with you some questions that you can ask to help you develop a strategic plan for your business, your team, or even just as an individual. And now these questions are really going to help you clarify what you're trying to achieve. And this is actually a 2-part podcast episode that's going to give you some simple questions that can help you to clarify your thinking and help you develop a strategic plan for your business. And as I said, these questions are not difficult, but they might take some thinking, and you actually might want to get your team together to answer them, because it just help you all think things through a lot more clearly, and they will help you go a long way. Now, but in today's episode, it is going to be 4 main questions that really can help you to position yourself to become the winning organization that you want to be. Now, when it comes to strategy, what is strategy? We all, obviously, most of us would know that the idea of strategy and tactics actually comes from war. But obviously in business, we're not at war. And so a more business definition of strategy is about winning. And it's all about winning in the marketplace. It's about winning, about making clear choices that can help you win in the marketplace. And what is it that you want to win? Most of the times you want to win more market share, you want to win more customers, you want to add value to your customers, and that's how you can win. And so strategy is all about making the right choices that's going to help you win in the marketplace. But there are a few things, and I will call them essential ingredients, that you need to have in order to be able to execute on a strategic plan. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. So 4 questions that I am going to give you. I'll give you some examples as well. And some of these things you've heard before. Okay, so most likely it's not going to be anything new. But one of the things I will be stressing is the importance of having answers to these questions and how you can use these questions as a leader in your organization or in your team to re-emphasize the importance of what you're trying to achieve and empower your people to go out there and make it happen and win. So the first question is, why do we exist? And this question is what I call, it's the purpose question. This question is giving you the reason to exist in the marketplace. And in today's world, I am guessing that is not a new thing for a company to have a purpose statement or a mission statement. And obviously, for many people that have read the book Good to Great, this is sort of where this came about where more leaders and CEOs came to an awareness due to Jim Collins' work about companies that stood the test of time had a clear purpose. But what we're seeing as we are now clearly in the 21st century is this is becoming not just a statement to have on your website. It is actually something to really think through and understand what your answer is to that question, why do we exist? In today's world, people want to join a business that is out to achieve something. And there are different ideas around hiring millennials, different opinions. I speak to many leaders who, in some situations, share their frustration. In some situations, we know that there are millennials that are actually the ones leading these organizations. So it is all about how you are answering this question, because having a clear purpose actually can attract the right people. A business that has a great why will definitely have a position and a place in the marketplace and would see their reason to be there because of that purpose. Now, it's not fair to say that not all businesses start with a clear why, and there might be a number of iterations along the way, but asking yourself the question is an important one to have. And so you need to have a clear answer to that question, why do we exist? Now, what I have found in many situations is I can work with an organization and they will tell me that, yeah, we've done all that. But then when I ask, okay, how is it being utilized, or does everybody know what that is? Or sometimes when I'm actually training managers or leaders in this organization and I refer to it, some of them have to sort of go back to the website to find out what it is. So those are some of the signs that, yes, maybe you have it written down, but is it being utilized? Now, when it comes to purpose statements, a lot of times people want to have sort of an idea of what might this sound like, especially if it's something that you haven't really done for yourself or with your business. So I'm just going to give you some examples of what this might sound like, when you write it out. And these are a few that I think are good examples, and I'll give you the reason why I think that they're good examples of why do we exist. So the first one is Disney, and their purpose statement is to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe. Now you can see that just by mentioning that, number one, if you know Disney, you know that they've hit the nail on the head. It's to entertain, to inform, and inspire people around the globe. And obviously the question, why do we exist? It's an important question, because when you flip it round and say, well, if we do not exist, what would the marketplace be missing? And when I read this again, you can see that Disney is playing a role in contributing something in the world to entertain, to inform, and inspire people around the globe. Another example is BBC, and their statement is to enrich people's lives with programs and services that inform, educate, and entertain. Again, for those of us in the UK, we understand that BBC play that key role to enrich people's lives with programs and services that inform, educate, and entertain. Now, it's up to you to decide if they enrich your life. That will depend on the program you watch. But they do play a role, and if people are finding that of value, then they are achieving that role. And if they did not exist, then people will miss that. A third one is Instagram. Capture and share the world's moments. That's their statement. And anybody who's on Instagram would know that they play that role, isn't it? So these are examples of purpose statements of organizations asking the question and answering the question, why do we exist? So that's the first question that's going to help you with your strategic plan. The second question is, what do we stand for? What do we stand for? And this question is asking for your core values. Core values are the behaviors that you want to demonstrate as an organization on a daily basis. So a second question that you might want to ask is, what guides our behavior and decisions on a daily basis? So this might be 3 or 4 statements or words that shapes the culture of the business. This is quite important. These are ingredients that you want anyone joining the organization to come in with. And so your interview process should integrate finding people who demonstrate these values. And it's not for me here to mention different type of values. Typical ones would be caring or compassion, or it could be diligence, or it could be integrity. These are typical ones, but you can phrase it in any way that you want so that it actually perhaps is not just a word, but it's actually maybe a short statement that people can remember. I was in the hospital a few weeks ago. My daughter had surgery. It was a small thing, but she's well. But while I was in the hospital in the NHS, I saw that they had their vision statement and they had their core values on the wall, and I took a picture of it. And there was 3 values: we are caring, we are fair, we are open. And during this time, my wife and I, we went back and forth. My daughter and I we went back and forth to the hospital, and there were frustrating moments. But I can actually say that in those situations where there was a bit of tension, they were caring. And in some of these situations, they were fair and they were open. And I experienced that from the members of staff. So it's good that they were striving to live up to these values. And that's what you want. This is how we operate. And in fact, there was one patient that was really annoyed because I think she had been told to go up and down and up and down. And she ended up, sort of being quite animated, and I overheard the nurse at the end when they solved everything. She went up to her and said, "We're really sorry about what happened earlier on." And that just demonstrated those core values. So these are behaviors that you want your people to choose to demonstrate, and this is the reason why it's important to have these things in place, because the leader's goal, any leader's goal in this 21st century, should be to help the individual that's in this organization to self-govern him or herself, to empower this person. And so having clear values that is answering the question, what do we stand for, should help your people make wise choices in your absence. They already know that this is what we stand for. This is what we can say yes to, and this is what we can say no to, without having to go up the hierarchy of the food chain to get clarification of, is this right or wrong? And so your core values should be those guiding principles to empower your people to make these kind of choices. And it should be spoken about, reviewed, looked at, having a way of assessing even, and also giving encouragement, recognition when people demonstrate these values. A very important part of your strategic plan, because this is actually igniting people in the organization to actually live out without you having to be there. And if you are a small, medium-sized company, this is the time to embed that, because if you're planning on scaling, the only thing that is going to scale without you knowing is the culture. And whatever you agree on now is what's going to scale down the line. So if it's in line with where you want it to see it go, that's fine. But if it's not, you want to definitely make sure that you're dealing with that now, because the future of that business is going to be based on the future leaders that you produce in that organization. And leadership is all about modeling certain values. And so you want your leaders to model these values. That's why this is an essential part in your development and in your growth as an organization and in your execution of your strategic plan. Question number 3 is, what do we want to see? And this is the vision question. So what will the future look like if you are successful with your purpose? That's what you want to see. So what do you want to see? And this is the one that many organizations find this quite challenging, because what they don't realize is that it needs an aspect of our imagination. A lot of times these vision statements are written in the now rather than in the future. And so a true vision statement must be able to paint a picture of the future after you have achieved your purpose. And so if you are actually able to use the word, we imagine a world where, then you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of describing that future. And that's what the vision statement is supposed to do. It's supposed to inspire people towards something that perhaps is even impossible, but yet we're still going to try. Many people are aware about Bill Gates' vision of placing a desktop on everybody's desk, right? And to some extent, you've got to agree that they achieved that, right? I mean, not every single person, but definitely enough, right? And so that's the kind of vision that you want to create a statement that is painting that picture. And that's what ignites people. Now, it's not necessarily the exact same about sending a man to the moon and bringing him back safely, which sometimes gets alluded to, even though we can use that analogy. But because that actually it was an event, that's the reason why we can't really categorize it as it changed the way everybody behaved. Most visions, they should change the state of our existence. They should contribute something where everybody's benefiting from it. Okay, so some examples in modern time will be IKEA, which is to create a better everyday life for the many people. To create a better everyday life for the many people. Disney, coming back to Disney, to make people happy. And Microsoft have updated their vision statement, and it's to help people throughout the world realize their full potential. While Nike is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. So these are statements that if you're working for these organizations, you know why you're there. You're to contribute to that. And that's an important part of any good leadership, is to empower people and encourage them to achieve that purpose. Final question is question number 4, which is, how will we measure our success? And this is the goals question. And as a business, we typically measure revenue, profits, cash flow. And what we're finding is that, well, that potentially we can say that went into the 20th century slot. Now, because most organizations have knowledge workers, we have to expound on what we measure. And so we need to start considering that, yes, absolutely, a business needs to generate revenue, increase its profits, and have enough cash flow. So we're not downplaying that, but we need to add other ways of measuring success. So just to give you some ideas, to give you a broader perspective, something like the balanced scorecard would be a good idea to introduce, because you have to think about how are you going to measure what you've mentioned in your purpose and vision statement. Like how do you actually measure that? So a few things that you can look at. Number 1, obviously, will be finances, but you can also look at what impact would that have on the customer, and how can we measure the impact on the customer? How can we measure the impact on the employees? And also, how can we measure the impact on the capability of our employees? For instance, are people growing in their new skills? Are customers giving great feedback? Are they coming back for repeat business? Are they referring other people to our business? are our own business processes and systems getting better? So these are other ways you can measure your success. And so with those 4 questions, you're beginning to have a comprehensive strategic plan. These are essential things that you need to have first before we go slightly further in our next episode. So we've looked at the 4, I'll call these core essentials that you need before going a bit deeper into the strategic plan. Because without these that I've mentioned, we won't be able to create this strategic plan that's going to help you win. And so the main question that we need to now ask is, how are we going to get there? So now we have these 4 areas. How are we going to get there? And that's what we're going to be looking at in part 2. So today we've looked at these 4 questions as a starter. Why do we exist? What do we stand for? What does the future look like? What do we want to see? And how are we going to measure? Now, if you do want the templates that I use during training and coaching for these sessions, you can email me, toye@businessleaderscoach.com, and you can just put in the subject title vision template, and I'll send that to you right away. For now, this is Toye Shimbi for Business Leaders Coach. Look forward to speaking to you again next week, and take care.